Welcome to Baseball and Coffee, episode 38 with Tino and Aaron. What's up, Aaron?
Not too much. How are you?
I'm doing all right, man.
Good.
You watching any baseball right now?
I'm not. I've just finished watching condensed games, catching up on news, and preparing for the pod. So I'm not slipped over to live games. I know there isn't a baseball today, but
Got it.
I've not made a plan yet of what I'm going to watch.
I've got the Marlins Reds in the background. So if Tommy Pham is up and I don't hear you talking or I don't respond right away, I apologize. Coffee stories.
I don't have one today. It's been more of the same for me. Still drinking that $7 bag of coffee, which I'm
Is it
enjoying.
the never-ending $7 bag?
I finished off the first bag and I'm on to the organic Nicaragua, but yeah, it's been home base week. I haven't been out,
Yeah,
so I've just been drinking the same.
got it.
Nothing new to report.
I should preview the episode. Today we are doing our midseason awards, midseason MVP, Cy Young, and Rookie of the Year, and then open forum. And we've got an exciting day of cards ahead for us. Just gonna tease you with that. I do have a coffee story. I have what looks like a sweetened iced coffee. What this is so this is about as ghetto fabulous as you can go. But it's also a tremendous treat. So this is what I call like essentially coffee candy. I was at the store. Sometimes I just want some caffeine. I bought a big bottle of the Khalifa Farms like pre-made iced coffee that sits in the refrigerated area at the grocery store. And I bought a container of vanilla creamer. So this here is a bottled, so this is a coffee card revocation story here. So this is bottled iced coffee with vanilla creamer and really small pieces of ice. And I am incredibly happy right now. So cheers to everyone who enjoys some bad coffee every once in a while.
I did think of one thing. Sam texted me or texted our family thread recently and said, I figured out what an Americano is. And of course, I replied back to him and I said, you need to try an Italiano.
Mm-hmm.
Which of course then he said, well, what's that? So I had to,
Nice.
to explain that to him.
It's funny. Go ahead.
Had to take that opportunity to spread the Italiano.
Italiano love, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I remember with the coffee shop, I first opened, and there were people that had their habits, but they were willing to learn more. And I had the fancy Synesso machine. This was 2010, right? The 09, 2010 had a Synesso, had like the Rober grinder from Marzocco, like the really nice equipment. And so they all knew, okay, there's more than what I've just been drinking, previously. And everyone started with these big, like 16 ounce was the largest coffee beverage that I would make. So everyone started with 16 ounces and sugar and, milk and all the rest. And my, kind of unstated goal was to get people to drink smaller beverages with a higher percentage of espresso, just so they could appreciate and enjoy the espresso more. So reduce the sugar, go from milk to water, that sort of thing. But it's funny because I went all the way in that direction to the point where, like, I would drink geisha coffee if it was available, or I would pay $10 for a pour over. And as I get older, I feel like I'm morphing back into that original customer who wanted like sugar sometimes and wanted a big beverage sometimes. And it's just interesting how you ebb and flow with in terms of your coffee kind of profile and tastes over time. I think at this point, there are days where I want an Italiano and I want a really tasty espresso. And then there are days where I want a milkshake like today. And that's what I actually have. It being supposed to be, I think 106, 107 degrees today in Walla Walla doesn't help me in terms of wanting to drink something small and hot. Anyways, That's my coffee rant. So again, this episode, we're doing our mid-season awards. Do you want to start with the AL MVP?
Sure. How long ago was it that we had this discussion? I don't remember. As I was prepping, I remember we talked about these awards, but I couldn't remember how long ago it's been.
I want to say maybe a month ago or so, something like
Okay.
that, maybe a month and a half.
Definitely had a couple shifts. I thought that was kind of interesting. Just of trying to maybe test my own, should I be changing this much? How much time has passed? But
Sure.
how do you want to do this? Do you want to do like 3-3-2-2-1-1? Or are you going to give me my three? Or
Let's go top three AL first. So just go three,
okay.
two, one.
All right. So I have Otani 3, Alvarez 2, and Judge 1.
Ah, cool. So our top two are the same. I have Jose Ramirez 3. And that may just be the anti-pitcher bias in terms of MVP. But I have Ramirez instead of Otani. Was it clear, Judge, number 1 for you?
It wasn't. I actually considered Alvarez quite strongly.
Mm-hmm.
He actually he's performing higher both in WRC plus and WOBA than Judge per plate appearances. He has roughly 80 fewer plate appearances due to a couple of stints on the IL this year with his hand. I don't believe he's had any issues with his knees, but per plate appearance, he's producing at a higher rate, and the underlying. And I looked at WAR, WRC plus, and WOBA in addition to the surface stats. We were doing players of this caliber. The surface stats are all pretty excellent. But yeah, he was actually outperforming him, but ultimately, I know that while I don't agree with Ian Kahn that Judge is a great center fielder, he does add defensive value. Whereas Alvarez is primarily a DH, and with them being so close offensively, I had to give Judge the nod at this point. He was also my pick last time we spoke, and I didn't feel like he did anything to really lose it. But I will say the way Alvarez is hitting the ball, if Judge slows down at all, I think it's very close for me right now. Much closer than it was for sure.
Right. So a couple things. One, Ian Kahn drives me nuts. Both the Yankee bias.
He's a lovable knucklehead.
Yeah, the Yankee bias, and then I'm not gonna say too much. Aaron Judge, according to Fangraphs, WAR is a positive defensive player.
Yes.
But yes. I also think that you get away with playing Aaron Judge in center in Yankee Stadium, and I don't know if besides maybe Great American Ballpark, if there are many other stadiums he could actually play a decent center field. Judge for me was a runaway. I think the difference in counting stats is just too much to overcome or to overlook. He's got 17 more runs, 10 more home runs, and 16 more RBIs, and 8 more steals than Alvarez does. Interestingly, I did not realize just how great the batted ball numbers were for Alvarez. I just assumed that Judge's 95.4 mile per hour average exit velocity was by far and above better than anyone else. And Alvarez is actually 96.1. So he's averaging 96.1 off the bat, which is completely bananas. The other stat that Alvarez has Judge on is hard hit percentage. So Judge's hard hit percentage is 60% and Alvarez is 61.9%, which is crazy. The reason, but between the counting stats and Judge playing a serviceable center field, I think that those two things for me, with regards to both fantasy MVP and real life MVP, I'd have to give it to Judge. And you covered the rest of it pretty well. They're just both, as far as batted ball metrics go, and even counting stats, they just blow out all the competition. I think it's the top two and then everybody else.
It's interesting from a dynasty perspective as well, because both these guys have had health concerns, and they're both very large players in terms of physical stature. And, those, don't want to cast type at too many bigger guys. Sometimes they can experience a faster breakdown, or, just because they have extra weight to carry on their frame. They're such big, strong guys. It would be interesting study, like who would you rather prefer, I think I prefer Alvarez. This is a pure hitter. But, Judge does bring a little bit more athleticism, and you don't have to worry about him being a DH only in your lineup at any point in his career, I don't think. But again, both of them can miss time with injury. But it's just hard. Anytime I see Alvarez taking at bat, I just come away shaking my head. He's just such a good hitter.
He is. He might be. He is a top 5 pure hitter in baseball, and I think he doesn't get enough credit for just how great of a pure hitter he is. I think people see him and you see the number and you see the swing and you think to yourself, big power, big slugger, and he is a slugger, but he's incredibly skilled. So as an aside, I actually had inquired about trading for Alvarez in our home league, and it was an interesting internal debate for me because I love everything about him. He's a player who I look at every number and I would trade for him in a heartbeat. But 2 things that keep me from really pulling the trigger on an Alvarez deal. One is his knees. I really do wonder if he's going to be really great for a year or 2, and then eventually his knees zap him of some of that explosiveness or power, and he becomes a 300 hitter but doesn't hit for the same amount of power. The other thing for me is you have to be a damn good Astro, and an Astro that I absolutely love personally in order to have him on my team, given the rivalry between the Astros and the Mariners. And so it's the trade was not it wasn't enough for me to pull the trigger on having an Astro be a centerpiece for my team. Unfortunately, I still have that bias because of my Mariners fandom. Do you have any teams that you hesitate to trade for players from in fantasy because of your rooting interests, or have you kind of put that aside and I guess progressed is the right word, because it definitely has been a hindrance for me at times?
I think it goes more the other way. Teams that I think of as really poor, I tend to devalue their players too much.
Got it.
So an example, like maybe the Rockies, I don't really consider Rockies at all.
Right.
And I considered drafting Connor Joe late in our draft, and it was the first time I actively scouted and researched a Rocky since I think Garrett Hampson back in his hype day, like nice. 2019. It was funny because I was watching Ashby start this week. Mm-hmm. He was facing the Rockies in Milwaukee, and just watching Hampson take his at-bats. And I was like, man, we used to all just be nuts about this guy.
Right.
I just couldn't wait to get this guy, and he's just the guy now.
I remember our preseason hype conversations about Garrett Hampson and where he was going to go in the draft. That's pretty funny. So Ohtani 3.
So who was your number 2? We differed on number 2. Who was your 2?
No. Alvarez was 2. It was Judge Alvarez.
Oh, he was your 2. Okay,
like 3 was
more of a gap.
Right.
You had more of a gap. Okay.
3 was Jose Ramirez for me, and 3 was right. Ohtani for you. I'm comfortable with really either one. I think if Ohtani was split the difference between this year's offensive output and last year's offensive output, I would have to put Ohtani probably 1, because he's such a dominant pitcher as well. The other issue is that the Angels are the Angels, and it's kind of like,
yep.
If you're not in contention, it's really hard to make someone or to vote someone MVP. And as much as he's carried that team, the Yankees have been dominant, and so it's hard to. It would even, no matter what kind of season Ohtani's having, it'd be hard to put him over Judge. Do you have anything to add with Ohtani? I know he's your boy. If you want to pump it up a little bit.
No, I mean, I was considering his contributions both as a hitter and a pitcher, which I know that make him uniquely advantaged. But we look at defense for hitters as part of the equation, a 3-win player as a pitcher this year. So those 5 wins above replacement put him second only to Judge. So on the strength of that, and then what he's doing on the mound, which I think is a Cy Young worthy season on the mound thus far. Like you, I mean, the team is not doing well. Yet if you look at most valuable player, it's not most outstanding offensive player. It's supposed to be most valuable, and he's personally stopped, I think, 3 losing streaks of at least 5 games when he's pitched. So while they're still a losing team, you can't say that he's not providing immense value.
Right.
And I think, honestly, I'm someone who's just a fan of his, and also just rosters him in fantasy, I worry about the weight of that team being like him just wearing down because he's trying to do so much.
Right.
I think he feels so much responsibility to try to keep the team afloat, and they're just very poor.
Right.
And I'm kind of tired of you piping up for him of late. I feel like you've been talking him up. I'm like, I'm going to put him in here above Jose Ramirez just so that we're at least acknowledging his 5-win season so far,
Sure.
albeit on a team context that is pretty disappointing.
Right. It is incredibly disappointing, I think, and that the way that organization has been run in terms of everything from being kind of the worst minor league conditions for the players to having a couple of stars and trying to bring people in to watch those stars and then having the rest of the team be crap, essentially. That's just I wish Ohtani would have gone to a different organization. And I wonder how he ended up with that team as opposed to someone else, or to somewhere else, excuse me. I also wonder about all of Trout's injuries. You know, there's always been whispers around, not to go too far out there, but I know there's been a lot of whispers over time about Trout's potential usage of steroids and whatnot, and he's breaking down at the age where I think that potentially could happen. They're being really secret about his back injury as well, so we'll see what happens. I don't know. I do see Ohtani playing somewhere else eventually. I don't think he's a career Angel. I don't think there's enough money for him to keep him in Anaheim, but we'll see what happens with that. It's going to be a really interesting turn of events, I think, for baseball, in the same way that it will be with Soto with this trade deadline. Real quickly, if you don't have anything else to add with Ohtani, Jose Ramirez is a 4.6 Fangraphs WAR player so far this year, which is in this top three is above Alvarez at 4.5. He triple slash is 289, 367, 567 for a 934 OPS, which is about 100 points behind Judge and 150 almost behind Alvarez. But he does have 79 RBIs, 19 home runs, and 14 steals. He's got a walk rate that's above his K rate. Super interesting player under the hood, 87.9 mile an hour average exit velocity. So he doesn't hit the ball consistently that hard. And his launch angle is 21.7 degrees. And so he hits the ball kind of straight up in the air. He's a player whose BABIP has always mirrored his average, or his average, I guess the other way around, his average has always mirrored his BABIP. But, he's the unquestioned team leader on that team. He provides a tremendous amount of stats all around at a position that is, he plays on the dirt, right? And that's obviously of value as well.
Yeah.
But it was a close debate for me between him and Rafael Devers. Devers is having a slightly better offensive season, I think, but I think Ramirez provides more value to his team. Did you do a number 4 and 5 by chance, or like an honorable mention at all?
No.
I just have to put out there that my number 5 was Julio Rodriguez, because I love Julio and because I had to do it. All right. National League, and it's not too far off base either. So National League, who was your 3, 2, and 1?
National League, Machado. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Freeman, Machado, Goldschmidt.
Okay.
I switched those at the last minute. I was just thinking about the Dodgers and the Padres team context, and Freeman has edged Machado in a couple of areas. However, again, thinking about MVP and thinking about what that lineup does and doesn't have, I had to flip those, and that may be some Manny bias because he's a stalwart on our rocket ship TGFBI team.
Yeah. So I had Goldschmidt 1 and Freeman 3, just like you did. I actually had Austin Riley at 2, as much as it pains me. So it pains me because I rostered Riley, then I traded him to you, I think at the beginning of last year, was it, or the year before?
I really don't want to talk about this.
But I had questions about his his approach coming into this year, and I ranked him a bit lower. I think he was consensus like right around number 4 third baseman in baseball, fantasy wise, coming into the year, somewhere around 3, 4, 5, or excuse me, 4, 5, 6. And I ranked him below that, and he's just continuing to hit the ball incredibly hard. And I was stunned looking at his, kind of digging into his numbers more. He's 297, 360, 595 with 28 home runs, 60 runs and 64 RBIs. He's a powerhouse, right? He's driving that Braves team. It's not Acuna right now. It's Riley. We should touch on Goldschmidt a little bit just because of the season he's having. I know we talked about him a little bit on a previous episode, but he's got a 192 WRC plus, which is higher than Aaron Judge. 68 runs, 24 homers, 77 RBIs, 5 steals. He's hitting 355, 417, 619 for 1.036 OPS. His BABIP is a touch high. It's 385. But he's having a prime Goldschmidt year after I think people were kind of shoveling dirt on him over the last couple of years. He's another player that I rostered and traded. I think I traded him for a bag of bolts, basically. Never loved Goldschmidt, not a big fan of his, but he's continuing to produce. Again, I think the BABIP may regress slightly. I also think he's been a beneficiary of St. Louis, the ballpark, playing as a hitter's park much more so than previous years. I'm gonna pull up his.
He benefits from playing a lot of games in Cincinnati too.
Yes,
he killed him over the weekend.
Mm-hmm. So he's run consistently high BABIPs in his career. Last year, 331, 2020, 364, 303 and 19, 359 to 18. So 385 is still slightly high, but I don't think it's I don't think he's having this kind of crazy anomalous type of year. I think that he's just hitting the ball super hard.
Yeah.
Freeman,
I mean, he was my runaway. He was first in WAR, first in WRC plus, first in WOBA.
Right.
And it's not really even that close in any of those categories.
Not at all. So Riley versus Machado, I think they're both playing really, really well. Machado's counting stats are a bit less. To your point, he's a bit more of kind of, I think, the unquestioned team leader with the Padres, and he plays a Gold Glove third base, which adds value to the MVP conversation. And then Freeman, Freddie Freeman's just doing Freddie Freeman things, right? I think he's pretty much the same player that he's always been with the Braves. He's hitting 322, 397, 537. His swing is ugly to me. I don't know if you like his swing. Usually I think of left-handed swings as being really kind of pretty and
I would say it's idiosyncratic.
That's a polite way of putting it.
I mean, it looks like it was made in a lab of like, this is how you get to a baseball mechanically.
Sure.
But it's not pretty to look at.
Mm-mm.
But it's just, it seems like it's ugly, but it's deadly. It does what it's supposed to do. Just really efficient.
When it's shorter, it's a shorter swing for a left-hander, and I think that's what's weird to me. It's shorter and it's a little choppy, but yes, it is definitely built in a lab, sort of. So what's the first left-handed swing you think of if you think of like the most majestic left-handed swing you've ever seen?
Griffey.
You better answer it right. Thank you.
I mean, that's the first thought that comes to mind.
Right, mine too. So the other one that I think of is Joe Strawberry. And Strawberry's wasn't pretty. It was just kind of, there was the one hand finish. There was the uppercut of his swing, the way he waved his bat. Just a funny one off. But yeah, I think if you asked 10 baseball fans of our age, what's the first like majestic left-handed swing you can think of? I bet you at least 9 of them would say Griffey. It's funny. So
he had the gift.
That's right. You have a number 5?
I don't. I would just real quickly on Freeman and Machado.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Freeman leads the NL in hits, 4th in WAR, 2nd WRC plus, 3rd in WOBA. So he's crushing those categories. I felt like the Dodgers are the best team in the league, and so I wanted to represent them as well. And he's, after I think a pretty slow start, 214 ISO, he's 161 WRC plus, so he's really been very, very steady as Mookie's been in and out of the lineup, and
Right.
as Muncie's underperformed and Bellinger's, settled into his role and all that. He's really been the consistent force at the top of that lineup and the best team in the National League.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Machado, yes, Riley has more counting stats, but he's also has 11 more games.
Mm-hmm.
And we forget, Machado, people thought he was going to be out for a month to 6 weeks, and he got back on the field in 9 or 10 days, and probably still isn't 100%. And his defensive value is vastly superior to Riley.
Mm-hmm.
And you watch that team play, that's a starting pitcher first team. That really matters.
Right.
Their infield defense is really exceptional, and he's a big part of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I do legitimately feel that he deserves to be in the top 3. Sub 20% K rate, 11% walk rate. And when they usually, if they need a big RBI, it's usually, either him or Profar.
Right.
But usually Manny.
So Manny, you're right. Manny's Fangraphs defensive WAR is 6.1, and Austin Riley's is negative 3.5. And so there's a 10-point difference between those two players at the same position. So yes, that is very much worth something. So I did, just real quickly, I did have a number 5, and it was Nolan Arenado. And I was surprised that I was quite surprised to see his stat breakdown. He was 296, 359, 528, 887 OPS. And just while we're talking about defensive WAR, his was 11.4. So he at least based on Fangraphs defensive WAR, he's still a top third baseman. You got anything else with MVP?
I do not.
Okay. Let's move on to Cy Young.
Can we do rookies?
Yeah, we can do rookies first, sure.
Yeah, I prefer that.
Okay. AL Rookie of the Year. It's a
runaway. It's Julio Rodriguez 1.
Okay.
Jeremy Pena 2, which is who I had in our previous cast, and then change here at number 3. I have Joe Ryan, pitcher for the Twins.
You have Joe Ryan at
someone I previously have dunked on.
So I have Jeremy Pena at 3, Bobby Witt Jr. at 2, and Julio at 1. I'm interested about, 1, your omission of Witt in the top 3, and then your inclusion of Joe Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things to play here. One, I knew you would talk about Witt.
Mm-hmm.
After our last pod, that's clear.
Mm-hmm.
2, I wanted to kind of figure out a way to talk about the Twins. They're leading the AL Central, and they're kind of a collection of guys. Other than Buxton, they don't really have any stars.
Mm-hmm.
But he's led that pitching staff thus far. He is a 1.5 WAR pitcher, which is not super impressive, but does lead, not super impressive in a league context, but in terms of rookies, he's leading all rookies, and that stat. 81 innings pitched, 7 wins, only 3 losses. I just think his xERA is 3.35. His ERA is under 3. So you could argue he's kind of been, the best pitcher on that staff on a first place team.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to call out what he was doing as to kind of recognize him, knowing that you would talk about Witt. For me, I mean, I know that Witt is uber talented. But the Royals were not a team they're 39 and 59, and in the last place, so diminished his candidacy a little bit.
Sure. So Witt and Pena were strikingly similar. I think I had kind of talked about their underlying skills on a previous pod, but so Witt's triple slash is 258, 301, 459. For a 760 OPS, and Pena's 265, 309, 464 with the 773 OPS. This is Witt versus Pena, 51 runs versus 43, 14 home runs versus 15, 51 RBIs versus 43, and 20 steals versus 6. So for me, one of the differentiators was steals. The other one is that moving forward, I do believe that Witt's athletic explosiveness is just going to add. I think he's going to outpace Pena in home runs and steals because of it. I do give Pena a little bit of a nod for playing a really steady and good shortstop for a first place team. I think that that's worth something. But Witt's season thus far, I can't ignore. It's interesting because, you know, I also have, like, I did a 4 and 5. My 4 was Stephen Kwan, who is quietly has a 750 OPS, even though he doesn't hit for any power. He's a 300 hitter, and he looks to be a 300 hitter moving forward. I do roster him, and he's been, I have to say, he's really a joy to watch as a player. He's a throwback, obviously, in that he's a contact hitter, and he does have power in the bat, but he chooses not to use it as a table setter. And I want to give him the credit that I think he's due for being a table setter on a team that's surprised thus far. And my 5 was George Kirby. I thought about Joe Ryan as well, but Kirby has been kind of as advertised thus far. He's got a 3.5 ERA, an xFIP of 3.47, a WHIP of 1.20. 3.4% walk rate for a rookie pitcher is pretty incredible. And on a team that I believe is going to make the playoffs. So Kirby was my 5. We don't really have to talk about Julio too much. We're staring down the barrel of maybe even a 35-35 season from him, or a 35-30 season from him. And the more I watch him, the more I see a 300 hitter and not a 275 hitter, which is just wild to think about. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. Every time I look up, he's hitting a 3-run home run to put the Mariners in the lead in the 7th inning, right? He's just, and the other thing I'll add about Julio from just a baseball standpoint, not a fantasy standpoint, was him being out in that first series out of the break against the Astros. You know, they had sold out the series essentially for the first time in a while, and Mariners fans were ready to go nuts. And because Julio didn't play, I feel like it literally took the air out of the franchise. And that's not to put down any of the other Mariners. It's just to say that he has he's breathed life into the franchise in the way that only like a Juan Soto or Ronald Acuna or, you know, any of the most top players in baseball can do. He's already there. And even for me watching, like, I watched because I'm a Mariners fan first, but the reality is I was probably half as excited to watch the series because there was no Julio. It's pretty, I don't know. I didn't think that my enthusiasm and excitement for watching a player could get greater than it was coming in the season with him. And it is like twice as much now. It's pretty darn cool. Anything else with AL Rookie of the Year?
Nope. Quite a shift since last time we talked.
Yeah, for sure. National League Rookie.
I will say watching Pena play short behind somebody like Framber Valdez on Sunday, it's like, you can't say enough about his defense when you got a pitcher like that on the mound.
Right.
He was just like a vacuum cleaner up the middle. It was incredible. And, you know, you did a good job highlighting, you know, Valdez is a historically prolific ground ball pitcher. And yeah, Pena just made every single play. I was really impressed. I knew he was a good defender, but watching that game from beginning until the Tommy Malone loaded the bases, I think is when I turned it off. But yeah, he really played a great game that day.
Well, he's got to make up up the middle for you know, Altuve's lack of range as well, right? He's doing yeoman's work for the Astros for sure. Absolutely.
Have you ever noticed that Chaz McCormick is like a doppelganger of Jose Altuve? I know you have to watch a lot of Houston in the ALOS, but I was watching that. I was like, he looks exactly the same as Altuve at the plate, like their stature, and they have the same like beard and
just
crazy.
Just 3 times as big. And McCormick's not big either.
I don't know. I mean, he's pretty little.
He is.
Yeah, he's a pretty little dude. I'll tell you who else has a doppelganger. We were just talking about Goldschmidt. I've been listening to this Andrew Luck podcast on The Athletic, which is, I'm not a huge football fan, but it's an interesting human story to me.
Sure.
Paul Goldschmidt and Andrew Luck are basically the same person. Just look at them side by side. It's crazy.
That's funny. I heard that. I heard the advertisement for for that pod, and I don't know, I was both interested and also like just not interested anymore, because Andrew Luck was, I think his football story is really interesting, and I know he's an incredibly smart guy, but
Yeah.
he was also, maybe he's interesting because he was so boring in some ways. But he was
Right.
the one who everybody referred to as like the one. Yeah, super interesting. I'd love to know once you're done with the podcast what your conclusions are. So let's take a quick break. We'll come back with National League Rookie of the Year and then talk about Cy Young and Open Forum.
Okay.
National League Rookie of the Year. Who are your top three? 3-1.
3-1. I have Christopher Morel, Michael Harris, and Spencer Strider.
Okay. I have Harris 3, William Contreras 2, and Spencer Strider 1, which is nuts that my top 3 are all Atlanta Braves.
Yeah,
Kind of
I
cool
felt
for
weird about
Atlanta
it
fans.
too. So
Yeah. I do have Morel 4 as well. So we have got the same, looks like probably the same top 4. Let's talk about Harris first. What have you seen from him? And what do you think his ceiling is?
I'm not convinced that we're not already seeing like the best of him right now, honestly. He seems to be going pretty well. I think he's really impacted their outfield defense, in a very positive way. And he's just been a good, I think, pretty clutch hitter at the bottom of their lineup to kind of get things going for the top, and also driving in runs out the bottom. He is very good with runners in scoring position. So he's just been a good stabilizer for them, both in, again, the bottom third and as well as in the outfield. He's 11 for 11 on the base paths. They're a team, I always think of them as a team that pushes it on in terms of running, with Swanson and Acuna and their second baseman, whose name escapes me at the moment, who's injured. There you go. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, they just tend to push the envelope a little bit, and looks like he's going to be carrying that on as well. So 11 for 11 is impressive. He was someone, the scouting reports and in terms of prospecting on him, it said not to overvalue the speed, but he's certainly shown that he has those instincts so far. I mean, I think 11 out of 11 as a rookie shows that you have a good feel for it. So that always is an asset for fantasy for sure.
Right. Fantasy wise, he looks to me like a very steady outfield 3, I think, to begin with, and maybe even an outfield 2. I don't know that he has OF1 potential or OF1 ceiling necessarily, unless he can really push his homers or steals past 20. But he looks to be a 2020 guy. And from a real life, through a real life lens, he has really impacted their outfield defense. As you said, he's got a great arm. To go from Adam Duvall as your center fielder to Michael Harris is a big shift. So if you can say he's a 280 hitter with a 800 OPS and he's a 2020 guy playing above average center field for the next 6 years in Atlanta, I think that's a huge deal. I'm in agreement. He's a player for sure. Contreras, the younger brother Contreras, we both have it, or I have it too. It's just hard to ignore an 870 OPS. I know he hasn't played all that much, but 11 home runs already. He looks to be, a fixture there. And I like the fact that they're using him some at catcher and then some at DH as well, right? So they're kind of saving that bat and playing him and d'Arnaud at the same time. The fact that he is a catcher and that his OPS is almost 50 points higher than Harris is why I have him at 2. But I expect by the end of the year, Harris would be my 2 and Contreras would be 3 or 4, because I expect Harris to continue doing what he's doing. Do you want to talk about Christopher Morel a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, he's leading the position players in the National League in WAR. I'm honestly surprised how well he's doing. He was not someone who I had really known much about up until this season, and being on the Cubs, had not spent a great deal of time considering him. But yeah, he really popped on this list. his WOBA is 360, which again leads his more ballyhooed rookie teammate Saya Suzuki pretty significantly. 132 WRC plus. He is striking out almost 30% of the time, but he has ice over 200 and 9 steals, 9 home runs. So, I mean, he just looks like his slash line is 277, 350, 485. So, again, I don't know what his ceiling is just because I don't know much about his pedigree, but he stood out pretty significantly with his bat amongst this group to me in terms of what he's posted this far this year.
So he's one of the kind of stereotypical second tier prospects who had athleticism, but was considered to have a little bit too much swing and miss and not necessarily have a true defensive home. Right. But I think his athleticism is playing, and his swing, he's keeping his swing and miss at a place where the explosiveness can show. Right. He's one of those that has just enough hit tool to actually be able to realize the athleticism that people like. So I don't know if I don't know enough about his bat profile currently to know if major league pitchers will find the holes in his bat and eventually he kind of settles into more of a utility type role. I certainly don't see superstardom from him, but I do watch a decent amount of Cubs games, just having lived in Chicago and liking the Cubs. And he looks like a piece of that team, maybe not like a core piece, but definitely a player that will contribute for the next couple of years. He was my number 4. And then, so we both had Strider at 1. I was pretty wrong about what I thought about Strider coming into the year. I thought that he was going to be a dominant reliever, but I wondered if his 2 pitches were going to be enough to really be a starter. And obviously we found that he has been a dominant starter up till now. What do you see in Strider? What have you seen thus far?
His stuff in pitching plus are really quite off the charts despite a limited arsenal at this point. I was actually pulling up Savant. I know his last start, I watched the condensed game. They were speaking about his third pitch, and it was something that he was continuing to work on. It's make fascinating podcasts as I try to pull this up to see what that pitch is other than his fastball and slider. But yeah, to your point, I mean, he's someone who transitioned from the bullpen to the starting rotation. So in 80 innings so far this year, he has 120 strikeouts, 5 wins, a sub-3 ERA, 2 holds as well. So, I mean, he's given Atlanta 80 really, really high-quality innings and seems to be part of the rotation going forward. So it looks like changeup is the third pitch that they have registered on Savant for him.
Yep.
That he's working on. He's throwing it so far 5.5% of the time.
I think the K rate for me is 37.2% right now, and it's impossible to ignore a starter who's able to carry a K rate like that. I think the one thing I'll say for fantasy purposes is, so I roster Strider, and I picked up Kyle Mueller, who is in AAA right now, and he actually broke his right wrist. I think his wrist, but he's a left-handed starter. Until before that injury, I would have said roster Mueller behind Strider, because there's a chance that they move Strider back to the bullpen, I think, to keep his innings down towards the end of the year. Either that, or they might kind of toggle him back and forth, but make sure that you have that next Brave starter coming up to back him up if he's someone that you roster. But yeah, to me, he's the runaway National League Rookie of the Year. I think what he's contributed to that starting rotation is one of the reasons why Atlanta is a threat this year. And I think without Strider, I don't know if they would be there.
No, it certainly doesn't seem like it. Looking at his last game against the Phillies, or I believe he went 6 innings. Yeah, he only threw the changeup 3 times. So there was no real significant change in his pitch mix coming out of the break.
Right. I assume that'll be because he's been successful with two. I assume that they'll try to add that third pitch in the offseason and not necessarily mess with what he's doing right now.
Yeah. He threw a
Um,
fastball 69 of his 90 pitches.
wow. Wow. That's what, 75%?
Mm-hmm.
More than that.
Mm-hmm.
I did have an
So-
honorable mention, number 5 in the NL that I want to kind of hat tip to. Is Hunter Green. His surface stats, he's 3-12 with the 5.59 ERA. That doesn't sound like a rookie of the year candidate, but interestingly, he's got a 4.01 xFIP, and he's gone to the hill 19 times, right? He's 19 starts already this year, and has a 28.3% K rate and a 9.8% walk rate. So his K minus BB as a rookie, despite being 3-12 with the 5.59 ERA, is 18.6%. So it's right near that 20% threshold that we always talk about. So with an xFIP that may come under 4 by the end of the year and a K minus BB that's nearing 20%, you're talking about like a really great baseline for at minimum a middle rotation and probably a top of the rotation type starter moving forward. It's just this year was the year that he was going to take his lumps, and I give him tremendous credit for the resiliency that he's shown, right? And he hasn't really shown a huge amount of frustration on the mound, despite the fact that he's given up a lot of home runs this year and pitching in a ballpark that's really small. And he continues to go out start after start. And I give him a lot of credit for being that guy. And I think we're going to see some really positive results in the upcoming years because he's taking his lumps this year. I admire a guy who's able to go through that quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Move on to Cy Young.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. AL Cy Young, who do you have?
My top 2 were locked down. I really struggled after that. My winner was McClanahan. I have Verlander second.
Uh-huh.
And I was really torn between Cease, Manoah, and Ohtani for the third spot.
Okay.
I ended up putting down Cease for my notebook, but I honestly could be talked into any 3. I think Ohtani is the most well-rounded of the 3 in terms of strikeouts, innings. Manoah has the most wins, has logged the most innings of the 3.
Mm-hmm.
However, Cease has posted the highest WAR and the most strikeouts. So I was really just torn of who was the best choice there. But I did feel that McClanahan and Verlander kind of separated themselves because they performed well. I looked at wins, innings pitched, strikeouts, and WAR as the differentiators. McClanahan is third in wins, sixth in innings pitched, first in strikeouts. And Verlander was first in wins, eighth in innings pitched, and sixth in strikeouts. And they both lead a position in WAR.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my top 3.
Okay. My top 3-1 were Garrett Cole, Shohei Ohtani at 2, and McClanahan at 1. McClanahan is just kind of separated from the pack, I think, a bit. 10-3 with the 1.71 ERA. His xFIP is 2.04 and a WHIP of 0.80. So he's just, will he continue to do this for the rest of the season? I don't know. We talked a little bit about them limiting his innings, but to me, his stats kind of, they don't blow away the competition, but they're definitely better than the rest. Ohtani at 2, we covered Ohtani a bit in previous episodes. I have Cole over Verlander, and so they pitched almost the same amount of innings. Cole's given up 9 more hits, and he's walked 11 more batters, but he also has struck out, I think 36. So it's 36 more batters. So it's 153 Ks for Cole versus 117 for Verlander. I went with the strikeouts, and I also saw things with Verlander that, to me, say that he might fall off a little bit. We talked about this last episode as well. His contact rate is 78.5. He's surrendering a 78.5% contact rate. Next highest on my top 5 is Garrett Cole at 70.9. So it's 7.5% more contact than the next pitcher. The other thing is the swinging strike rate is 11.6%. which is pretty close to league average. And so obviously Verlander is a great pitcher and a Hall of Famer. But as I said in the last episode, I think that there is slight reason for concern down the line. And so I know we're talking about Cy Young for the first half, but I just think Cole is a slightly better pitcher overall, and he's my number 3. And then Cease, I have Cease at 5. You spoke to Cease well. Swinging strike rate is 15.9%, CSW 31.6%. He's just doing all the things that we thought he might be capable of. The one concern obviously is his 10.6% walk rate, but he's still dominant despite walking more than 10% of the batters he faces. So again, my 1 through 5: McClanahan, Ohtani, Cole, Verlander, and Cease. You got anything else in the AL?
It's interesting. I mean, I think your Cole Verlander breakdown is interesting to me. I weighted heavily the 4 more wins and the almost a full win more so far, despite a similar number of starts. So it's interesting. I'm also fascinated by why Fangraphs doesn't list Ohtani when you filter by American League pitchers. I had to go find his stats, and it doesn't list him. It's kind of frustrating. And secondly, I'm wondering how in the world Kevin Gausman leads the position in WAR, despite having only 103 innings and 7 wins. I'm like, what's in this formula? And maybe
Right.
you know, maybe you don't. I don't know. But like Shane McClanahan's WAR is 3.2, and he has 14 more innings and 3 more wins. Like, how is he? I just don't get it.
Right.
I don't know. I just don't get it.
And Gosman's hits, right? Also, you know, he's got more hits than innings, and he still leads the AL in WAR. The one other thing I'd add with Cole versus Verlander is Verlander's ERA is over a run better, but Cole's xFIP is 2.79 and Verlander's is 3.35. And so I do think that it's kind of a you know, buffet, like pick your favorite foods or pick your favorite stats from each pitcher and determine which one you think is better. And so for me, the xFIP and the Ks are the 2 things that I value. I also try not personally, and I don't know if this is the right way to go, I don't look at wins and losses as much when I think about Cy Young as I do some of the other statistics. They do matter, but obviously we know now that they're so bullpen and team context dependent that it's hard to judge. I think the 20-win threshold is still pretty cool. It's just not quite what it was when you know, we were kids, if you want to call it that. I still remember like who the 20-game winners were from our childhood, because wins were such were like the indicator of a great pitcher back then. Not to say that they're not significant.
Yeah, early open forum question.
Yeah.
So this is 2 parts to this question. First is so in a dark world, alternate world where Cole and Verlander on the Mariners, you have 1 game to win for the Mariners. Who do you want to give the ball to? Who would you give the ball to?
Cole or Verlander?
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm answering this honestly. I don't think that there's a difference between the 2 for me in a clutch game.
All right. Second part of the question.
Cole has better stuff. Verlander is probably a bit more mentally strong. So
second part of the question. So in the fantasy world, you have both of them on your roster. You only have 1 start left on Sunday, and you're trying to win a matchup. Who would you rather put in your starting lineup?
Cole. I'll go with the stuff. It's not for the sake of our AL Cy Young argument either. I'll just go with, but I would go.
No, I'm just kind of trying to get an interest. I'm trying to get your take on the pitchers themselves. I'm just curious.
So 1, I'd go with stuff and strikeouts. 2, it pains me though. Both of those questions are incredibly painful because I hate the Yankees and I hate the Astros.
I know. That's why I said it's a dark alternate world.
Anyone else but those 2. I can't debate the numbers though, right? The numbers are the numbers.
Right.
That's
you didn't ask me, but my answer would be Verlander for both. I think Verlander
was implied
of all the and this is a difference between you and I don't highlight that difference to say one's better than the other. We're just different. Sure. I think Verlander's intangibles are off the charts.
Mm-hmm.
like whatever stock you put in, like fortitude, want to, desire, all those kinds of things. If you're a goofball like me and you think that stuff matters, I trust Verlander. I don't trust Cole. I think Cole is made out of tissue paper, but that's just me.
I agree with the assessment of the two individual players, as far as Cole being made of tissue paper and Verlander being, kind of like tough and a bulldog and all those things. But I said this before, I really do think it should be a part of an episode where we discuss what does that mean, right? How do you apply that particular assessment to predicting performance? And is it something that should be used both on a real life level and a fantasy level? Is it something that we should use and quantify it, or is it something that's not, that doesn't matter? And because we do have such differing opinions, I believe with that particular idea, but I do think it's something that certainly front offices have to discuss. I was just listening to a podcast that was discussing Khalil Watson, right? And how Khalil Watson has been really terrible this year. And one of the things that was brought up about his intangibles was that he got upset with an umpire on a check swing call and took his bat and kind of mirrored it like it was a machine gun and pointed it towards the ump. And it was a reaction that was incredibly immature and not acceptable. But I also think that there are cultural filters and different what's considered, not acceptable is not the right word, but how people interpret different behaviors can be seen really differently based on where you're from and based on what you've seen as acceptable growing up. And it's just a conversation that I would love to have, because there is a difference between Verlander and Cole, right? But how do we quantify that, or can we quantify that?
Yeah, I think I first admit it biases me. So
I'm sure that it biases me in certain ways. I just think that all of us are a little bit different in that way, right? And it's a conversation.
I just mean, like, with Cole specifically, like, how many times have I pushed down Cole?
Bro,
I find reasons to push him down.
Right. He is super annoying, right? He's super annoying. He's whiny. He looks like he's not having fun out there, right? I hate that he was a Yankees fan growing up. Like, there's all sorts of things about him that I don't like. I should like Verlander, having lived in Detroit and being a Michigan grad, right? Like, I followed Verlander for a long time. I just have never really liked him as a pitcher. All right. NL Cy Young. Are you finally going to give Sandy his public props, even because I know you love him and you're trying to push him down in the ranks so you're not pumping up your own guy?
I am. I have him as my clear number one.
Okay.
I do believe he deserves the Cy Young to this point.
Mm-hmm.
He is seventh in WAR at the position. However, he's first in innings pitched, fourth in strikeouts. I'm sorry, he's seventh in wins. He's first in WAR, seventh in wins, first in innings pitched, and fourth in strikeouts. I think he's his xERA is under 2, or his ERA is under 2.
Mm-hmm.
And his expected stats are a little bit higher than that. But I think he's kind of having an old school type year. We just talked about, old school 20 wins, 200 innings, all those things. He pitched the other day, six innings, had 10 strikeouts, and I was listening to the broadcast, following along on at bat, and the broadcaster basically acting like it was disappointment. I'm like,
yeah,
you're taking this guy for granted,
right?
That he only quote went 6 innings, but I think that kind of sets. A, I think they shouldn't take him for granted, and B, that it kind of sets the standard for where he's put the bar for himself this year.
For sure.
But he's having a great year.
He might get 250 innings, which would be absolutely unheard of in this era.
Yeah.
If you ran the Marlins and you were out of contention going into September, do you continue to push him to 250 innings with all those pitches, or do you dial it back in order to save those bullets for next year?
I don't know. I mean, he's a professional, and I think in one sense, like you're denying him the opportunity to go out and do his craft. I mean, he's trains all off season to go out and do this job, and to say because of the way our team performed, we're going to deny you that opportunity, or I don't know. I would be really queasy about that.
Mm-hmm.
I think just from a skill standpoint, the other thing I admire about him is the he has 9 wins this year, and I can tell you last year I had him as well, and he did not have 9 wins. I think he didn't even have 10 wins.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going deep into his games. He's kind of taking the game by the throat and holding on a lot of times with narrow or no leads and still pitching late in the game,
Mm-hmm.
which is great for fantasy. I mean, we can talk about the old time baseball and the touchy feelies about that, but fantasy wise, he's helping me get wins by staying in the game longer.
Right.
Because the longer he stays in the game, the higher the chances are he's going to get a win.
Right.
Because the moment that pin comes in, it's all up for grabs. So his ability to pitch deep in the games is not just again about the aesthetics of that and just how different he is. It also, I think, helps him
Right.
get wins, which are so hard to come by in fantasy.
I like the fact that he's succeeding at the level that he is as basically I know he's more diverse than this, but he's a sinker baller at heart, right? At heart, it's sinker, change, slider essentially. And that's an old profile, right? That's an old school profile. And he might be kind of leading the way towards getting away from the elevated fastball a little bit, because hitters like Marcus Semien have caught up to that idea, and is again leading the charge towards a new approach or a new way of pitching. Although not everybody has the arm that Sandy Alcantara has. He's my number 2. I've got Corbin Burns at 1. There is a big innings difference between the two. Again, this might be my strikeout bias. I'm going with the pitcher with the 64.6% contact rate and the 16.3% swinging strike rate. I think Burns is probably more of a new age type pitcher in that he doesn't go quite as deep into games as Alcantara does. I think the innings themselves are a little bit more dominant, but I have no problems with Alcantara at 1. I think if he continues to go, if he goes 250 innings on a Marlins team and he wins 18 games and his ERA is right around 2, I think Alcantara ends up being my Cy Young, but for now it's Burns. My number 3 was Scherzer. And then I did do a 4-5. I had Nola and Wheeler as 4 and 5. What do you have as your 2 and 3?
I had Fried and Burns.
Fried as 2 and Burns as 3?
Mm-hmm.
What about your inclusion of Fried? I did have him in this area, but not in my top 5. What is it you saw with him?
He is fourth in innings, 3rd in wins. He has 10 wins, and 3.8 WAR. And he's kind of I watched him. This might be recency bias. I watched his game this week. I think it was against the Phillies. I have to look at my notebook, but he fields his position so well. I think he has some of the same intangibles I spoke about with Verlander in terms of his tenacity. Mm-hmm. I was surprised to see he was 10 and 3. He kind of snuck up on me. He's the opposite of Burns. I have Burns at 3 because of his strikeouts. They have the same amount of innings. However, Fried has more wins, and he's been more valuable this far. Much more, just a much different pitcher. You couldn't get really more different types of pitchers. Mm-hmm. Burns with the strikeouts, and he is the more modern day approach. But I think I tend to undervalue guys like Fried. Guys like Fried and Valdez are guys I've had on my fantasy team, and I've traded them because they don't have the swing and miss. They don't have that ceiling. Mm-hmm. But I think just as someone who appreciates pitching, I tend to undervalue guys like this. And I was just looking at for this study, I was really impressed by what he's done so far. And frankly, I kind of missed it. So I wanted to call him out for the season. I think 10 and 3, 125 innings is really, really good.
Cool. And then we talked about Nola previously. We talked about Scherzer as well. Scherzer's funny to say this because he's so consistent, but he is a bit of a wild card with regards to Cy Young. You know, if the Mets go on a run and Scherzer continues doing what he's doing, he could very well end up being the NL Cy Young, I think, despite Burns and Alcantara and their performance thus far, just because Scherzer is, as long as he stays healthy, has consistently been so dominant.
He has 82 innings so far. Okay. I was trying to see where he was in innings. Okay. 6-2, 82 innings.
But I think it's fun. I think we're in not a golden age, but I think that there are, you know, you look at those top 3, top 5 pitchers in the AL and the NL, and that's exciting, right? That's incredible quality and incredibly talented pitchers and different age groups. You've got Verlander and Scherzer, you know, versus like Cease and McClanahan, and Alcantara's what, 24 still? 25? You know, you got
I think he's on the other side of 25.
You've got a good range of ages and styles, and it's a cool time to enjoy pitching, I think.
Yeah, he's 26. Did you see that McClanahan only went 81 pitches this week?
I did. I was really that was fascinating. Also, George Kirby, I think he went 5 innings, and I think it was only 60 some pitches. It was like a really small amount. It's very obvious that the Mariners are trying to conserve him for down the stretch. I was really glad to see that they're not going to, just from a fantasy perspective too, that they're not just going to burn him out and be done, but that they want to try to keep him for the push. Yeah, he faced 5 innings, 17 total batters faced. He threw, where's the number? Total batters faced. I thought they had pitches in here. Maybe they didn't. Anyways, that's my bad for not being able to find this here. Statcast, batted ball, nope. Pitch type. I'm not going to find it. All right, let's move on. Open forum. You asked a question already. I'm going to ask you a really simple one, but a fun one. Who is your favorite current player and why?
Wow, you asked me this before.
I know.
I mean, it's Ohtani. It's Ohtani. Is my favorite player right now. You know, I have this quote or just reminder for myself every day. I have this collection of notes, and one of them is take great care and gratitude for what you have. All you have at careers end and begin all the time. And I think, you know, he's at an nadir, an apex in his talent and career, where his talent is at the peak and his opportunity is there, and you never know how long it was going to last. And one wrong turn on the bases, or a run injury, or a change in team where he no longer gets to play both ways, or, you know, just I just think despite the team context, he's just a really special talent who's kind of at that special point where the talent and opportunity are again at a high point. So I try to just be appreciative of that. Seeing him live twice this year, and I'm going to continue to try to do that when I can, just because I think he's in a special spot. And I, you know, again, we talked a little bit about Verlander and how I feel about his tenacity. I think I admire the way Ohtani carries himself immensely. And that makes him easy for me to root for. He certainly shows emotion, but he also is very stoic and very focused, and I admire both sides of that. And he's also very respectful. He's very good. Seems to be very invested in his teammates and root for their success, but he also takes a lot on his own shoulders and demands a lot of himself. So that self-discipline and self-drive. So there's just a lot of aspects of him that both on and off the field that I look up to. And then just try to be grateful for his talent.
I think of when you made the comment about, you know, kind of enjoy something in the present and be appreciative of it. I think of Bo Jackson as that's the first, second, and third name that comes to mind for me, because I was at an age when he came up, I think I was 11, 12 years old, right in that age where I was admiring athletes and so excited to collect cards and play ball. And I remember what every Bo Jackson rookie card looked like, right? I can picture it and describe it. But I was also a football fan. And I remember him at Auburn. And then I remember the saga with Tampa Bay when he didn't want to play for them and then ended up with the Raiders, and he just ran the Seahawks over. And I'm a Seahawks fan. And, the iconic, catching the ball and running straight up the outfield wall and throw in the Kingdom from left field and Harold Reynolds at the plate. Like he was a mutant. And then all of a sudden he was gone, right? He went from being this superhuman player to, being immortal. And it was heartbreaking for me. It was absolutely heartbreaking. And I think you're right when you think about a player like Ohtani who is doing things really under the radar and unappreciated that we've never seen before, or at minimum, Babe Ruth was the last person to do it. I think you're right. We have to appreciate every day that we have of Ohtani and almost take him out of the team context and just appreciate him as an individual and what he's accomplishing. But yeah, he's super cool. He's super, super, super cool. I know that I've asked the question before, but I also think that Ohtani's season is the flip of what it was last year in terms of pitching versus hitting. And to me, that almost gives you more of an appreciation for who he is as a all-around player. The fact that he can be such a dominant hitter last year and then be such a dominant pitcher this year is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Thank you for answering that.
Yeah, of course.
So
I know your answer is Julio, but do you want to add anything else?
Not really. I think he's just, I don't know. There are 3 players in my life in all of sports who have captured, and sports is my life, right? Like anyone who knows me, it's literally the people that I care about, sports and cooking and food are the things that are most important to me, right? And I spend 98% of my time either with sports and people or food and people or working. Like there's not a minute at home that I'm not either cooking or watching a game. So the players that I admire are like family members to me. I know that sounds silly or funny, but I care that much about sports, right? And so my heroes growing up were Ken Griffey Jr., and then my real heroes were Ken Griffey Jr. and then Gary Payton, right, of the Sonics, and Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is kind of the ultimate for me, but Julio has taken a place amongst those 3. And already I was thinking about that over the last couple of days, that he's like my Michael Jordan. And it's really cool to be able to have that experience with the player that on the team that you root for the most. And so my love for Julio is continuing to grow. It was speculative before the season started, right? And at this point, it's real. And that's really, really cool to kind of realize that the player that you were hoping for, he's actually better than the player that you were hoping for coming into the season. So yeah, it's Julio. Like I said, I watched the series this last weekend against the Astros, but it didn't mean the same thing to me because he wasn't playing. That's how important of a player he's become to me. Let's take a really quick break and we'll come back with a really cool surprise with our baseball cards. Go ahead. What you got?
So I know I asked you an impromptu open forum question about Verlander and Cole. My actual impromptu question, or my actual open forum question, was about the trade deadline. I know we've already talked about the Yankees a bunch today, so I won't make you talk about them. So I'll give you a choice. Either your reaction to them acquiring Andrew Benintendi, who's someone we've talked about on this pod relatively frequently, or just anything in general about the trade deadline you're either looking forward to or that you do or don't like about this time of year in the MLB news cycle? I'd be curious your take on one or both.
I'm happy to answer both. I think Benintendi was the right acquisition for the Yankees. A team that is performed that well up to this, or that has performed that well up to this point in time. You're not looking to, I think, really shake things up that much, but Benintendi will improve them incrementally in the outfield, and he's a very consistent player. So I also think we're seeing them try to surround their sluggers with more bat to ball, right, and more defense, understanding that Judge and Stanton are going to provide the majority of the offense. So let's make sure we have players like IKF and Benintendi to surround them, so that the defense is decent, right? So Benintendi is going to probably play a corner, and he's going to be an upgrade in the corner, in one of the outfield corners defensively, and he gets on base. And so a player that gets on base in front of Stanton and Judge is a huge positive. So I think that was a smart deal. They gave up 3 power arms, but no arms that were really of tremendous value to them. So I think it's a smart trade by the Yankees. I don't really have a comment as far as, him crossing the border into Toronto and some of the brouhaha that was created with his lack of vaccination. That's up to the Yankees to decide whether he's of value to them or not. But yeah, I think from a baseball perspective, that was a very good trade, smart trade. With regards to the deadline itself, as a fan, as a kid, it was really exciting, right? We saw Ricky Henderson get traded. We've seen David Cone get traded. We've seen all these superstars get traded. So as a kid, it was like, oh my goodness, like something cool is going to happen. As an adult and as a fantasy player, so as an adult and a Mariners fan, I worry, oh shit, the Mariners are going to trade Noelvi Marte, or they're going to trade Emerson Hancock, or we're going to trade Jared Kelenic and watch him become a superstar, right? Because all of those players could be traded in the next week. We're going to trade Harry Ford, and he's going to become the next like explosive 2020 catcher. And I'm not one that's really into dealing prospects for superstars, unless it really is Juan Soto, right? So we'll see. I think the Soto saga is going to be really, really interesting. Everybody has a different take. One day it's the Cardinals are the best fit. The next day it's going to be one of the New York teams. The next day the Dodgers have the most to give, right? I don't think there's any way to really know. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, as an adult, it gives me a stomach ache and a headache until the deadline is over. I roster David Bednar and David Robertson as my 2 closers in our home league, and I could end up post deadline with 0 closers, and then having to deal off pieces in order to acquire 2 closers for the playoffs, right? So I'm waiting for the deadline to pass. I guess I'll read all the articles leading up to it, but I'm anxiously awaiting the end of the deadline, and it's not exciting to me anymore in the way that it was. I'm too invested. How about you?
Yeah,
Both Benintendi and the deadline.
I was hoping he would get traded to a more offensive friendly environment at the trade deadline. It was one of the reasons I went back and required him. And so I guess from a fantasy standpoint, that came true. I'm also hoping Christian Walker gets traded to a better situation, because his under the hood stats are really, really good. And I would feel a lot better about playing him if he was on a better team. Honestly, I probably should be playing him anyway. That's a different topic. I don't know what to think about Benintendi in New York. Roster Resource has him batting 5th and playing right field. I don't know how serious Stanton's Achilles issue is. I don't know if this is just maintenance or if he really is hurt.
Sure.
But they've already optioned LaCastro, and then they have Hicks listed as a starter and left. So, yeah, they have him batting 5th. So Rizzo 3rd, Torres 4th, Benintendi. I've kind of lost my confidence in Roster Resource. I'm just interested to see his playing time, his XBA and OBP this year have been excellent. And certainly if he's batting fifth, he could accumulate some RBIs for sure. The trade deadline, I do. I think we're going to see a lot of players' values shift. I really tried to hold onto some moves to at least pass this deadline, because I think, to your point, you could either be on the right or wrong side of that, or maybe you'll be a little bit of both. But I do think we're going to see players' values shift quite a bit, unless it's a quiet deadline. But it doesn't seem like it's lining up to be that way. Kind of hold on and just take the news as it comes, and see where the roles line up once that all happens.
Right.
There's certainly, I think, you want to dream on someone going to a better situation, but to your point, you could, Toronto brings in, like a closer. I could lose a closer just like you. So, it's definitely interesting.
It's nerve-wracking.
I get the news cycle can be a little bit fatiguing. Sometimes it seems there's more smoke than fire, but the actual day of when stuff starts happening, that's pretty exciting to me. But leading up to it, I do get a little fatigued with just the speculation.
Right. I guess it's part of the deal in being this invested in the game, in fantasy and in baseball itself. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it being over. I don't need any more anxiety. I don't need any more angst. I'm ready for the deadline to pass, to know what I have, and to move forward with that. So
as many knowns as possible, right?
Right. Well, and the flip side is, right, you could also be the beneficiary of a trade. You could have a dominant setup guy, because we play in a league with holds, and a guy could go from a holds guy to a closer in one day. And holds guys we can go out and find. They might not be as dominant as the previous one was, who became a closer, but you can go find holds, right? So that may happen too. So it's not all negative, but it is definitely the unknown.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Neither of us like the unknown that much. And it gets worse as we get older. All right, cards. So we play in a league it's 16-team league. League's been around for a long time. I've been in the league for, I think, 8 or 10 years now, something like that. And you've been in the league now for 5 years. Is that right?
Yeah.
Something around there. And we've gotten to know most of the guys pretty well. Some of us are really close. A couple of them I lived in the same city as in the past, but Smurf, Doug, who was on the previous pod, Matt, who we've had on periodically, all these guys they're really important people in our lives. And I say all that because one of them, Ken, Chico's Bail Bonds, the name of his team, reached out to me and said, "Hey, I've got these cards, these old packs of cards that, can I send them to you and you guys can open them?" And, I said, yeah. And I was really kind of touched by it. And lo and behold, last night, I came home and there was a box for me. And when it was addressed to Valentino Ganacia's care of Cotillo Pit, which I thought was hilarious. And the sender address, the return address didn't have a name. It just said Chico's Bail Bonds, which was awesome. But I opened it up and I was like, holy shit. So this here, there's a number of packs that will open over time. But I believe what this here is a pack of 1988 Donruss, which is like the coolest thing. And I talk about what the other managers mean to me or to us, because I think I was really touched by it. I thought it was a really, really cool gesture to send me or to send us these old packs of cards, right? That are actually worth something. I thought it was really cool and very meaningful to me that someone would do that, would appreciate the pod or appreciate us as baseball fans to the point where they would send us something of value like that they've had for a long time. So with that, I'm going to open this pack. This is for you, Chico.
If I could add, I have a very similar experience. I had a package arrive yesterday, and I was downstairs organizing my tools, and listening to baseball, and Laura's like, "You have the weirdest looking package. It says it's from Bales Bonds, and it says to Hoyt." She's like, "What is this?" And I laughed and I said, "It's baseball cards."
Yeah.
She's like,
Did
"What
you
do you
open it?
mean?" I'm like, "I'll have to tell you later. It's baseball cards." But
Right.
yeah, I mean, Ken has been really vocally supportive of the pod. He's reached out to me, and as I'm sure he's reached out to you several times to express that. Even encouraged me to talk quote shit about his team anytime that I want,
Mhm.
which is appreciated. But his team, he's a really good manager, so there's not a lot of shit to talk. But
Mhm.
anyway, yeah, shout out to Ken. That was super thoughtful. I sent him a note, thanked him again yesterday. But yeah,
Mhm.
a very similar experience on this end.
Right. Right on. So this is our first pack, Ken. We've got the old school puzzle piece. I don't if
You
Bill, if
gotta turn your blurring off.
I don't want to turn the blurring off. If you're
Or
old
I can't
enough,
see the card. I can't see the card without it.
let me. I don't remember how. Nope, that's not it. Oh my
Should
God,
be the
I
three
got it.
bubbles.
I'm like I'm like an old dude trying to figure out the computer. All right, puzzle piece, old school. Gino Petralli. Over here better, over here better. There. Greg Minton. Oh, the next one is for Matt for fastballs. Joe Hesketh of the Montreal Expos. I'll ask you if you remember this guy's nickname, Eric Plunk.
I don't.
It was Eric Kerplunk. Not a joke. Angel Salazar. These are 88 Donruss. Ken Schramm. Tracy Woodson. Oh my goodness. There is a call. So do you have a player who you thought was going to be a superstar as a kid, who you swore up and down was going to be an absolute superstar, and you were like convinced, and you realize now that it was just like some foolish fandom, and the player was never really amounted to be much of anything?
No, I don't think I do.
All right. So one example for a lot of people of our age is Kevin Moss of the Yankees,
Okay.
because he came up and hit a whole bunch of home runs at the beginning of his career. This guy was like my basically favorite player for maybe 3 days. Sam Horn.
Okay.
Sam Horn was a left-handed slugger for the Red Sox. So in his first year, in 158 at-bats in 1987, he had 14 home runs. 14 home runs in 158 at-bats. He was 6'5", 215, left-handed. Like, I thought he was going to be like the next Babe Ruth, basically. But Sam Horn is a name from my childhood that carries quite a bit of importance. Tim Stoddard. Here's one. This is also for Matt. Bill Madlock, underrated player from a different era.
It should go back to that logo.
The Tigers, yeah, the logo is awesome. He looks like he led the league in batting in 83 with the Pirates, hitting 323. He's a career, as of this card, he's a career 305 hitter. He had 174 steals. I like Bill Madlock a lot. Mark Knudsen. Oh, we got some random pitchers in this one. Mike Griffin, who's actually the first card that I don't have any kind of recollection of. Fred Manrique. Ooh, our Diamond Kings card. This is another one of my favorite players growing up. Calvosky Daniels. Cal Daniels and Eric Davis in the Reds outfield was one of my favorite outfields. The back says Cal Daniels teams with Eric Davis to give the Reds two of the most exciting outfielders in the game. He is the delicious combination of power and speed. In 1987, only his second year in the majors and a season marked by knee injury, he led the Reds in hitting with a 334 average, 123 hits, 24 doubles, 26 home runs, 64 RBIs, and 26 steals. Cal is only 24 and may well be one of the most dominant Diamond Kings ever to wear a Reds uniform. So he had knee surgery and he still hit 334 with 26 homers and 26 steals. I like it. Last card.
So were all the Diamond Kings were illustrated like that?
Correct. Last card, Hall of Famer Barry Larkin.
No way.
Pretty cool, yeah. And as of this point in time, he had only played in 2 seasons. So this is probably his second year card.
I love the summations at the bottom of the cards.
Yeah.
And how it goes chronologically backwards.
Old school, man. I don't know. Chico, this is really cool. I'm really appreciative of this. Very, very, very appreciative. Super, super fun. Many more packs to come as well.
Yep.
Right
Same.
on, man.
Got more on this side.
Awesome. Yeah, anything else? Anything you're looking forward to this weekend?
I had an off the wall series I wrote down. You'd probably never expect that, but I put NL East Central Clash, Phillies and Pirates. I was intrigued by that series.
That works. Philly or the Pirates have become
Nice.
fun baseball to watch. At least with O'Neal Cruz and Cabrian and Reynolds. That's it'll be fun. When
Hopefully after the deadline they'll quit messing around and batting Kevin Newman lead off and pitching Bryce Wilson and like all this Josh Van Meter nonsense. Just all
Bryce
this
Wilson
line
settled
filler.
down. He settled down after giving 3 runs his last start for a little while there. But yeah,
Yeah.
he's not great.
There was not a ton of compelling matchups. There was a lot of interleague, which I know we're not a big fan of. But I liked there was the series that pitching in that series. There was like a lefty. It's Quintana Fulter, and then Keller versus Suarez. I thought was compelling, and then Brubaker Nola. Brubaker usually gives up hard contact, but he also gets some strikeouts. So in Pittsburgh, I don't know. I just like the Pirates' chance to take it to the Phillies a little bit.
Right. I may get to another Tri-Cities Dust Devils game this Sunday potentially. So they'd be playing Spokane, which is I believe is the Rockies single A affiliate. Because I think they have Zach Veen, if I'm not mistaken. Spokane minor league baseball. Let's see. They are. I didn't say. Sorry, this is also bad podcasting, but it would be super fun. I'm also looking for obviously Mariners Astros again. Probably give me more headaches, but yeah, Zach Veen. So they are the Colorado Rockies affiliate. So Tri-Cities and Spokane, I might be able to get out to on Sunday night. But another fun baseball weekend. Looking forward to, like you said, Wheeler against the Pirates on Thursday. I've got Gilbert against the Astros, Ray against the Astros. And then it's actually the first real week of international soccer as well. So life's good, man. Can't complain other than the 100 and I think it's supposed to be 108 here tomorrow. Other than that, we're good.
It's Otani Day.
That's right.
All right.
Appreciate you, brother.
Thanks.
Talk soon.
Talks. Bye-bye.